Hello and welcome to this version of the community meeting. I'm Ken Sipe, the host for this meeting, and it's a relative. It's an expected open meeting, so it's not like the host really matters. It is being recorded. I've started it recording, so make sure that the conversations are things that represent things that you would want heard in the public space forever. With that, I'll just start with a quick announcement that the KUDO 012 RC1 was released yesterday. Through some internal conversations, it was decided that we should keep the cadence, which I think is a great idea. And so there was a release. It's fairly simple release. I probably should have had that ready to view. I don't, but things to expect. Important things is that there's a parameter file that can be used now, which means now we can have a version file that was actually released in a .1 release on 11, but that was only, I wouldn't say it was an accident, but it was unfortunate consequence of things. But we'd like to highlight that in this release. Also, there is a package verify on template ranges that was noted in code as not being supported. It's now fully supported. We already were using that for some of our operators. So that should be resolved. And I'm also pointing out that previously we did not do KUDO client or CLI binary releases for Linux, and that is now added to the release. That was mainly, that adds a lot of value with our testing infrastructure where we can pull down that CLI separate. Anyways, if there's more questions or thoughts or notes on that, please let me know. What else? That's the highlights, but this is the first release of KUDO that has the KUDO switchover and the KUDO as a library to the KUDO test. So we haven't removed the KUDO test. I'm not sure if we will. That's not really ever been talked about, but separating it out, the KUDO, separating that out was super useful. I think will be valuable long term. So that was released. What we historically have done is done an RC release and given it a couple days. Usually that's time for operator developers to switch over to run their E2E test and whatever other tests they may need to verify that they are good. Within a couple business days, we tend to do the full release. So expect 0, 12, 0. Hard to say, 2 business days would be tomorrow or Monday, perhaps. We have a lot of our contributors on holiday in Europe based on the holiday weekend. And it's likely that we actually won't do the full release until Tuesday. And again, that's open for discussion. So that's why we're all here. Any questions about the release or future release? All right, well, hearing none, I see we have a follow-up. Shane, do you want to add some thoughts? Oh, want the ARM support again. Yeah, we have an issue open for that. Why don't we start with whatever you want to start with, Shane?
Sure. Since the last sync, K-Sphere's internal testing group, we have decided that we are going pretty much all in on KUDO. So at this point, KUDO is a decided upon prioritized bit of work in the sprint that just started. We have a little bit of work on that, and then next sprint we're planning on moving a lot of our tests over to KUDO. So thanks again for KUDO, and you'll probably see us involved in that part of the community for sure in the near future.
Yeah, if we can pause for a second, that is awesome, first of all. Second of all, if you have feedback, things that could make KUDO better, I think we're going to be, well, I'm hoping to be sensitive to whatever those needs are, meaning responsive, and would love to see it. I know that if we have time, there's some KEPs that are either close to landing or have landed in KUDO that I think will make things easier, in particular around test steps. So if we want to do some reviews of that, that would be useful as well.
Roger that. Yeah, once we get kind of deeper into the integration, like right now we just planned it, but once we start doing it, don't worry, we'll blow up the issues box.
Perfect.
So that kind of led into this next one, which is following up on Helm compatibility. So we are looking at wanting to utilize KUDO, as we talked about last sync, as kind of part of our core machinery in some of our add-on deployments in KSphere. This is right now just a prospect. There's no plans or anything like that, but the main thing that we need basically to enable us is Helm compatibility of some sort. So since the last sync, I looked over, I think it's KEP 10, the packaging KEP, and talked to some of you guys in Slack. And it seems at the end of the day, there are two different kind of avenues of Helm compatibility that seem really important to us. And that is the most immediate need is just flat compatibility. We should be able to hand you a chart, a reference to a chart somewhere in a chart repository, and have that be deployed by KUDO as like a single plan operator. That one seems fairly straightforward, and that's kind of what the that KEP went over that pretty well, like the options for that and stuff. And then the other side of it is later being able to migrate. We don't need to necessarily do this in the shortest term, but a very, very easy path to migrating off of Helm to KUDO when we need more day two and full life cycle kind of management of the applications that we were otherwise deploying in Helm. So for my part, personally, none of this is prioritized and probably will get prioritized. So like we can't, as an organization, work on any of this right now. So my intention is to try to work on it personally on my own time on the weekends to get it done and then bring it back as part of our proposal. Okay, now KUDO supports Helm. Would our product owners and stuff consider maybe allowing us to kind of move some of our machinery over to KUDO now and start that direction. All like I said, this is all just a proposal at this point, so no work is actively going on except for Cuddle because we did prioritize that. But what I'm looking for in the near future is, I guess, basically some help, some guidance, some handholding to just get me to the point where I can find like kind of the MVP for this compatibility layer. What will be everybody will be happy with as kind of like an MVP for it. Call it experimental, call it whatever we need to, so that I can get something done, working, and testable. Hopefully, since this is going to be on my own time, the smaller the scope, the better.
Yeah. No, good points. What?
I would look at our task system because you know a good starting point there might be to create a Helm task. In fact, we even moved to the task system with this case in mind back when we were still planning on doing that work ourselves. And so that'll give you like an atomic way to do that.
Okay, maybe I'll catch up with you after this, and you
Yeah.
can just throw me some links.
Yeah, and then by the way, like I don't see with that task system a reason that other than splitting apart templates that you ever really need to migrate off of Helm. And what I mean by that is if a Helm chart's just another task in the system, well, you can just create plans for your various day two operations there as well, right? So you can
Yeah, that makes
theoretically
sense.
with the Helm task in place, just add like a backup and restore plan, and run those separately, depending on the chart, right? I mean, obviously that doesn't work for everything, but in a lot of cases, I would imagine that would be fine up until you maybe need, more life cycle around what the Helm chart's actually deploying and then migrating. But you might be able to get further than you might be able to get pretty far with just a base Helm task.
Roger that. Yeah, so if we throw up a task followed by plans for kind of the life cycle of it, this meets kind of an immediate need that we are currently solving with init containers, and probably does it in a way that will be less volatile and hard to diagnose when things go wrong. So that sounds good. We will eventually need to migrate. So this isn't something that we need to figure out, like basically to get the proposal up that we want to move more of our base tech over to onto KUDO. But I guess I'm just pointing out that in time we know we will want to be able to do that. Like there will be charts that we control or that we manage ourselves that we'll probably want to be full KUDO operators. Just if nothing else, to not maintain them as charts because we have no intention to use them in Helm anymore. So, but that is, like I said, that's a soft requirement for later. The hard requirement is just being able to say what you just suggested, basically. We need to be able to fire up a Helm install as a task. So I'll follow up with you after this then, I guess, or some point this week, and maybe this weekend I'll get started on a kind of a prototype of that and bring that up in the KEP. Does that sound like a good plan of action?
It does. Yeah, and a good timing as well. We'll be looking at prioritizing the kind of a roadmap and fitting this into that might make sense. So
cool.
It's great. You want to talk about ARM?
Yeah, I know this one's probably like a groaner because there's literally nobody that needs it except for me. This is not, by the way, a facility of like my work on KSphere. A couple friends and I recently started up Kubernetes-ARM Slack channel and an organization in GitHub where the whole purpose of it right now is to use GitHub projects to organize work to enable ARM, basically enable Kubernetes on ARM. And KUDO is one of the things we have a project for. So it's basically across the entire ecosystem. Like right now, I've finished some work on Valero a couple weeks back that now builds on ARM. More or less everything that we need to get personally in this case, my Pi 4 cluster running KUDO and my EC2 ARM instances running KUDO. So that's kind of the long and short of it. This is something I'm willing to make the build for myself. I just wanted to think about it real quick and make sure this was something that, like, if I started work on this, this would be accepted and okay, and you guys are okay with kind of maintaining an ARM build.
That was going to be the follow-up question. Is there something stopping you from building ARM? I think the challenges I can only speak from past experience. In the past, when ARM was requested, it just requires extra overhead support tests. How much do we commit to verifying that it's workable, that it actually functions, that kind of thing. So, but I don't think there's anything stopping or blocking the actual build of an ARM from our repository.
No, from a technical perspective, it's a very brief amount of work, and I'm ready to do it. I just didn't want to like surprise you with it when all I had done so far is put in an issue for it, and we hadn't really had the full conversation. That's why I wanted to bring it back up.
Yeah. Like the question becomes, do we say when we release this that it's tested, right? And the same is the case for like a Windows version of the kubectl KUDO plugin. Like there's no technical reason it works. We just don't have an automated way to smoke test it. So, I mean, as long as we call that out in generally like have a persistent release note that, no ARM builds are not tested by the KUDO core team. The Windows CLI is not tested by continuously tested by the KUDO core team. I think I'm okay with having that amongst our release pages. And because the problem is, let's say we do have someone opens an issue or opens a PR that is specific to the ARM side of the house. We need to, or even not that, we just need to make sure it's still working on ARM, right? Beyond just go build compiles it.
Yeah, the maintenance thing. That's exactly why I brought this up, because I just wanted to make sure that like if I contributed this, it would be accepted because we're okay with maintaining it as part of KUDO. So does the right now KUDO is just using GitHub's new CI, right? Is that right? Or is that
No,
wrong?
we're still in Circle. We have a few actions in
Circle
place.
CI, okay.
Yeah.
Do they support or they offer any ARM compute?
Let me see.
Because if they did, I would say we could just make like a test that runs every so often that just double checks, an E2E test that double checks that it works.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything here, but I'm wondering like if you could use the VM to run QEMU. You know, it's gonna get dirty, right? So
if
I
you
would
wanted to, yeah.
say probably not.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
there's the machine option, so we would have a dedicated ephemeral VM. GitHub Actions does run on a raw VM now, though it's not running on containers. So, let me look. We'll have to
yeah,
look up an ARM testing option, right? That's
yeah. Ideally, whatever CI system we use, whether it's GitHub or Circle, the ideal situation I imagine is we don't have to write any code to emulate or anything. We just get an ARM build.
Hey, guess what? The GitHub Actions supports ARM and Windows,
Ta-da!
so we can do this. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, that is sweet. Cool. So yeah, I guess I'm just asking for permission to do this when I feel like I have some time to do this. And if we need to have it sit in PR for a while, but the idea is we would find a path to eventually support this. And if you need me to put in a KEP first so that we can kind of talk it over a bit more, that can be my action for today. I'll put in a KEP first.
To me, this is release machinery, so I don't think it needs a cap. I think an issue slash PR is good enough for this.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
Issue
issue
exists.
exists. Yeah.
Yep.
I made the issue like a week ago or something. So, all right.
Yeah.
I'll keep in touch with you guys about that then. And thanks for the time to ask about it and stuff. Appreciate it.
Yeah, from another perspective or mine, this open source project, if there's enough interest, we do it. Yeah, obviously within certain realms and reasons. And
Yeah.
if you're going to be that point person, I would support that.
Cool. Yeah. The
But
one thing I want.
I think I think the documentation matters though. Like what being very clear in that we're providing it, but it's limited in our testability and testing of it until we deem otherwise.
Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah, the thing I want right today, like right out the door, is the KUDO Redis operator already has ARM images. So if the controller worked on ARM, I'd be able to run Redis with the KUDO Redis operator right out of the box.
Sweet, we're all going to Raspberry, huh?
Yeah, I run Raspberry, and like I said, the AWS has a really nice, inexpensive ARM instance set now.
Awesome. Love seeing your return and your contributions to the community. That's awesome. So it's like we have another convert maybe or whatever. I don't know. Anyways, glad to have you. Anything else, Shane?
No, thank you for the floor. Go ahead.
Yep. At this point, it's really just open discussion. I do have listed. I do have listed Cuddle, KEPs, and direction. Worth looking at. I know that might be challenging because now there's multiple projects, but Cuddle is its own thing now with its own KEPs. We are still following the KUDO enhancement, which is kind of a slimmed down version of the Kubernetes enhancement process. And things that are just, if you haven't yet, it'd be worth going over there and taking a look. Some direction that I see as being high to be discussed with some road mapping and smaller teams and such. But one is breaking out Cuddle where it can be used from an API standpoint. And part of that is probably creating a model that we can, when we're reading the YAML files or reading the configurations, we read those into a model that can then be executed, but also can be programmatically accessed. So that seems to be high. There was another thing. Anyways, if anybody's interested in having a discussion, let me know. I don't mind breaking down or diving into it and doing that now. But with that, I'll just recommend that people take a look there and see what's up. I think, the other KEP that I think is super, super critical. Let me just go out there. The other one that's super critical is it's a KEP around making test steps better. Let's see if it's No, it must have landed. Is it this one? Yes. Okay. So this is high on the list. I think there's a lot of value here. In a test step, right now, there could potentially be a lot of verbosity, a lot of repeating YAML, because you're doing similar things step to step, multiple steps, having a lot of repeating YAML. What this proposal would allow us to do then is to bring in resources on apply or on delete or what have you, and allow you to use the same YAML over and over again in different steps. Among other things, there's more to this kept than that, but that's the core of it. So in the motivations and goals, as you can see up here, composability, reusability of YAML, that seems to be seems to add a lot of value. So, adding some discussion around this area would be really great. I'm hoping that this KEP is implementable sometime soonish. Thoughts, questions?
I have to give it a read over. I don't think I've stumbled across that one yet.
Okay, yeah. And if you, I'll make sure that we have that. I can't do anything with the way this is set up. All right.
The problem is that you're using Chrome instead of Firefox.
I was a Firefox user many, many moons ago. Guess I'm supposed to go back. Okay. I think we're left with open discussions. Any conversations people want to bring up? Any directions? Anything?
Just a small follow-up thought on KEP 10 or sorry, not KEP 10, and on the Helm compat thing and the last sync. Last sync, I was talking about, and I didn't have a firm idea of what this looked like yet, but some kind of a reference type. So in KSphere right now, we have basically what is a reference type that either references KUDO or Helm. And it's like a nice shorthand that at bare minimum is just a few lines to say what you need, and that ultimately gets composed into a KUDO operator, etc. But from the end user perspective, they can just see a simple CR that says where the KUDO repo is and what we want to deploy. So that controller just passes off onto KUDO, right? Something similar in KUDO would be nice. I think right now, and correct me if I'm wrong if there's a KEP or something that I've missed on this, because like I said, I'm now getting back into the ecosystem, so I'm not caught up on everything, but something where I could express a KUDO operator as like a simple, maybe few line type is something we kind of want, but it's, again, that's kind of more of a soft requirement. In the shorter term, having just library, we're going to be calling KUDO as a library. We do that now currently. That's mostly how we integrate with KUDO right now, is through the Go package, as opposed to through the CLI. Having convenience methods, convenience functions around, feed me a chart reference, like give me the chart that you want to deploy and I'll ultimately turn that into an operator for you. Would that be something that would be okay to tack on to like kind of the work to add Helm compatibility, do you think?
I would hesitate on that because KUDO's still about installing KUDO operators, right? Like you might have a reference in the operator definition out to like have a Helm task, right? That we just talked about, but I like you're still deploying an operator at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's what this prospective convenience function would do as well. Just that it would kind of from the end user perspective, it would kind of just make it so that you don't have to worry about anything except handing it the Helm chart. You're thinking that's probably pulling too hard.
I'm leaning against it because I don't want to like what KUDO's niche is that's working well up in the CNCF sandbox and has the sponsors for and everything is KUDO as an orchestration engine, not as a replacement for Tiller, and it's like a very fine line there where it makes sense. And so no matter what, like, okay, so let me contrast this with something we decided back in May, June, July of last year. Was right now we're not touching. We locked the format that actually gets deployed to the cluster, right? So you have three CRDs with KUDO right now, and that's operator version, and instance. And the reason we locked down operator version and operator for the moment, we're not doing anything with them, is because um, we weren't quite sure, and we wanted to work on the operator developer experience first, and not try to have two changing things in flight. So operator version could ultimately be that reference rather than embedding everything right in that CRD, especially as they get larger. We're going to have to deal with that. But in my opinion, it should still be referential out to a KUDO operator, not directly reference a Helm chart. Because it's not a deployment tool, it's an orchestration tool that has a deploy step in there for templating or for a Helm chart or for a CNAB bundle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. So back at Hamburg a couple years ago, you and I talked about making when I worked on my first KUDO operator, you and I talked about making a potential tool specifically for Helm to KUDO conversions.
Yes.
So as opposed to adding something in KUDO that gives this kind of functionality, that is a convenience function that you feed it a Helm chart and then it produces the KUDO operator with the correct Helm task and all that. Do you think you guys would be open to having a KUDO builder owned repository that has a library for this, similar to like Helm has Helm v2 to Helm v3 as its own library right now? Some kind of Helm v3 to KUDO library?
Well, we have a separate. Okay, so this raises a good point, because we do have a separate KEP, because what you're talking about is, okay, I want to use partial templates from a Helm chart. I don't want to just have that as the deploy plan, right?
Yeah.
We have a KEP for this. KEP 12 operator extensions that Tom also worked on. Which has this need in mind of actually going and extending from something like a Helm chart.
Okay.
So that, like I think it's something where we can get this functionality in. Do we reference Helm in this? No. Okay, we have a non-goal here of extending Helm charts.
So is
Tom,
there
do you remember what?
Yeah, so this is, we're not extending Helm charts in this because we're doing the Helm conversion as an operator in the other KEP.
That's
So
right.
we're tackling them as two separate issues. One is, how do we make a Helm chart as an operator? And the other is, given an operator, and I don't care if it's a Helm chart or not, how do I then extend capabilities on top of that? Or
Right.
customize
Okay,
it
so
for
that's
my-
KEP 13. Yes.
Yes.
So then KEP 10, the one where we talk about the potential to basically have a conversion in an operator that converts Helm to KUDO. What do we need to do to get that one into implementable? What's the path forward with that one?
10 is.
I may have said the wrong number.
Yeah, 13 is the one for that. What do we need to do for this? It's provisional right now. I think we just need to kind of flesh out and everyone get happy with what the actual operator.yaml looks like for this.
Gotcha. Are you guys open, generally speaking, during the KEP process to prototypes that would basically be part of the KEP?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's tons of little branches for various things. So we won't probably merge it while it's provisional, right? But
Right.
Yeah, it commonly happens. I was going to advertise as well that I believe there's been a couple of proof of concepts attempted on this KEP. Just so you know, there's been branches that probably are still in the repository around this topic.
yeah,
Fair enough.
and I have a KEP 10 branch for Helm as well, but that was before our task system, so it's definitely not working, and would be done a totally different way today.
Okay. Well, I will. I'll kind of fit this into my considerations when I get to working on this weekend. Again, because I can't. It's not part of work yet. I'm hoping to get it part of work, but I'll keep you guys informed of like kind of what I'm thinking, and if I come up with a prototype, I'll link it.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Since we're talking KEPs and just kind of getting ideas out there, there's a current KEP out there around dependencies. No. It wasn't dependencies. It was resettable parameters. So I'd love to have some continued thought around this. The approach that was, I guess, the idea that came up around this is resettable parameters, which is using our existing parameter systems to do other things, like resetting a value that was set at some point. The case for this is, let's say you want to do a backup, and the backup, of course, needs to know where it's going to be backed up to, which might be a configuration option. But in all likelihood, at the point in time when you want to do a backup, you probably want to name it, either based on some convention, or maybe it's the user that defines that. But you can imagine if you gave it a name, let's just call it backup 1, that name is only useful for a short period of time. It has no meaning past that moment in time. Sorry about the dog, by the way. I don't actually like the term resettable parameters. It actually proposes a solution. I actually like the idea of having arguments or parameters, whatever you want to call them, that are defined solely within a plan. And I don't know entirely what that looks like. I have an idea in my head, I guess. I don't know how to validate it. I don't know how to push those things through. But it makes more sense to me because I think these are arguments. I think of parameters as configurations and things that are declarative in nature. Whenever we have imperative operations, which we have several in KUDO, that's one of its distinctions, we ought to have a different way of managing those. Yeah, go ahead.
If you look at issue 67 from 2018, we actually talked about this a bit. It was not a formal KEP, I don't believe.
What number?
No. And then what happened?
Elena commented, I think what KEP 20 will allow. So yeah, issue 67.
Yeah. You know,
Right, old school, like double digit, huh?
You know, and this is you know, I do wish we still have plan execution here, right? Because it really enabled this sort of thing. I'd be in favor of bringing plan execution back.
Yeah, we should talk about it. So that's the reason we should talk about it. That's interesting. And potentially we have different types of plans, right? Some plans that require management from a plan execution standpoint, or maybe we group them all together, I'm not sure. But yeah, I definitely like an instance of a plan to be the only point in time we have data associated with that particular instance of the plan.
Instance of the plan.
Yeah.
I think I'm following. I got it. Thanks, Ken.
It seems so easy. I just didn't want it to, be obvious, I guess. Yeah, this is, I'm going to lay reference to this within the current proposal as well. So thank you, Tom, for pointing that out.
And I don't know what KEP 20 is to know whether that satisfies it or not.
I don't know either. I mean, we can look.
I'd have to go back and check.
But
manual
really,
plan executions, yeah.
Yeah, which is not quite it, because we do have that already, I think.
When this was going around, the idea of manual plan executions was creating a plan execution object with this spec inside of there. And then at some point, that kind of got, I don't know how you guys do it now.
No,
I in that because you guys got
I think what happened is we newly have the latest version of manual plan execution, which is probably why it's in reference to that KEP. But I don't think it allows for passing parameters. So I think the solution that is being worked on now within this KEP and KEP 28 is a solution around that so that we can actually pass parameters. But I don't, this feels like the mental model associated with this is how do I use existing features in a way that allows parameters to be passed. But I really, it feels conflated and complex, and it doesn't
It doesn't
my
feel like
mental model.
Kubernetes either.
Yeah.
I would be a huge fan, and maybe, I mean, maybe this is a cap I just need to open and wade into the fire. But like, let's bring it back. Plan execution, team plan execution.
Yeah, we just
We
need to
probably
know
need to
how we
go.
want to.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Not
just
going.
wanted to add a bit of context from the SDK side, DCO's comments. So when we do execute backup and restore plans, we do allow the user to kind of specify a whole bunch of arguments that are interpreted by the framework, basically. A concrete example of this is basically how Cassandra does its backup and restore plans. So we basically allow them to specify, for example, like AWS secrets, the bucket that they want to dump into, the snapshot name that they want to have. So like this changes depending upon your backup, and like the Cassandra key spaces that they would like to kind of back up and restore to. And then this can again change for example, Azure, where they don't have S3, they have, you know, their own version of the object store. So this has been kind of in use by the DCOS Commons SDK for a while, and it's been quite useful for us so far. So does that kind of give at least a little bit of like actual in practice use of arguments that you guys are trying to implement for the KUDO side?
I'm not sure. I think I'd have to go look again. It's been a while. KUDO does have the ability to have parameters that are basically like config.json on the DCOS side. But what we're dealing with now is something that's temporal and less. It has a short longevity to it.
Yeah, so these are specified at runtime, at least for the DCOS SDK. So
I see.
you typically have your YAML where you kind of define your typical life cycle of your operator, and that remains static. But if you wanted to have like a one-off plan that executes and you wanted to specify parameters for it, we did kind of allow that. And these parameters are, again, you know, like the bucket that you want to dump your backup data to, whatever key space or namespace that you wanted to back up to. And we found that to be quite useful.
Yeah, does it have fault tolerance support? Like if you started a backup and it were to fail or disappear or something, would it restart up and know those parameters? And how does it know those parameters?
That's a good question. I haven't investigated the backup part of it. I would imagine so, because what you're doing is you're spinning up a task and it's inheriting all these environment variables that were sent to it. So then these would get refired up again, and the recovery side of things would kind of handle that. But I should go off and actually simulate a failure to see how well that's handled today. But yeah, that's a great question.
That would be worth looking at prior art. Yeah. I think there are some differences, and in the Kubernetes space, I think having that execution plan, or plan execution, I should say, it was filling a role. I think maybe we should reevaluate that.
Yeah, like I would like to add, like there for Kubernetes, at least we want to have like, you know, generic parameters there, because for example, one plan would need one parameter and some other plans maybe need 2 or 3. And then we have to just bypass those parameters to the operator. So, and for example, for DCS, you had to develop an API, you know, like code it in the Java side, like what to do, which parameter are separated, how to parse those. And I think like that was like one of the blockers that we don't want to do that, because maybe backup plan for Cassandra makes sense. Just we want to back up one cluster, but maybe we want to restore it. It still needs 2 or 3 parameters, right? And so that's why, you know, like, and I think like Yanni is not here, but we have been talking about that around backup and restore for Cassandra with him. And he just stepped back because of not to having just ad hoc solution for Cassandra, just passing one parameter to the plans, because that would not be like appropriate solution in this case.
Right. I just want to clarify that we actually send in a dictionary of string key value pairs, and that is then interpreted by whatever framework it is. So right now we pass in a whole dictionary with all these key values of, for example, your bucket name or your snapshot name and that sort of thing. So it's one argument, but that argument is a dictionary. And right now the dictionary has a string value type. We aren't supporting any arbitrary ones, but that's how we got around this whole idea of having any arbitrary parameters going into your plan. So yeah, just a minor clarification.
Yeah, but I was trying to say, like, let's say like it totally makes sense for dictionary, but let's say I want to have a described topic, right? And that's a plan. And I will now need a topic name, and now I have topic list and things like that. And other than that, I want to migrate Kafka to some other and start a plan. So this is, you know, like it might be a dictionary or it might not be, right? In those cases.
Yep, I agree. It's a open problem, I guess.
Slowly dropping like flies. I'm going to stop the recording when there's only me left. So, no, appreciate the conversation. It's super useful. I think this PR is in question based on all these conversations. I really do think we need to step back and look at it holistically. I'm even a little concerned, just to throw it out there. We created or changed parameters to be more rich. In other words, have maps as opposed to strings and things of that nature.
Yep.
Well, go ahead.
No, I was saying,
Yeah, that happened fairly recently, and the main support for that was around labels. And if there's more, I'm not sure, but I almost want to reverse that. The more I think about it, the more I think that labels and annotations should be more first-class citizens within the space, as opposed to having one mechanism that it then puts it in the hands of an operator developer to manage all of this mess. Like, they have to think differently. This parameter goes to this and this goes to that. And I don't know. I do feel like it's more of a first-class citizen, and that you may want to change it over time and have selectors that are managed differently than parameters. And maybe, I don't know, I just throw it out there.
Yeah, no, Ken, like totally agree with you. Like for like, you know, annotation labels, it should be like before. But like I'm right now using, for example, the type array for a specification of the Cassandra cluster topology, right? So I need to somehow say like how a data center 1 looks like and how data center 2 looks like, and it could be n data centers, right? And it has been helpful, but yeah, like it's going, you know, like I cannot create it through the CLI. I have to go through the param files, because otherwise through CLI I cannot express it, you know, like nice enough.
Right.
And yeah, but yeah, like there are like more use cases than labels, but yeah, for labels and annotation, I agree. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you for that feedback. So it sounds great that we have a use case for which it's useful. And so I was never against it necessarily. I just wanted to make sure we have a use case, and we do. And then it also sounds like we're kind of on the same page with we should have annotations and labels as a first-class citizen, managed differently.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. No decisions there, just throwing it out there. If we talk about it a little bit later. I would like to, on this pull request, probably get some, maybe set up some meetings for us to have some discussions around how we want to solve this. There's way too many ideas, and maybe we need to start with the KEP. Is this the KEP itself? Yeah, okay, great. So I definitely would like to change the name of this KEP. I don't think it should be resettable parameters. I think the whole idea is basically temporal parameters or arguments for plans, and then we should come up with a number of different options there, and then vet that. So All right. That's it. I think that's it for our meeting today. Unless someone wants to bring something up. Our next meeting is April 23rd, so 2 weeks away. And I was going to ask if we could get some volunteers for a host. We're a small group now, so I don't know if there's volunteers on the line, but if there are, I'd love to note that. Anyone? All right, well, we'll
Can
figure out some. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was not going to volunteer. I was just going to say like let's ask in the channel, like
Yeah.
to broader group, and if not, then I will just step up. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, great. Awesome. That is it then. 2 seconds. Anybody have anything else? 3, 2. All right. Everybody stay safe. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for making KUDO and Cuddle as great as it is, and hopefully we can make it even better. All right. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.